The alien commander stood in the center of the command chamber, the air around him thick with tension and the faint hum of damaged machinery. The walls, once smooth and shining with polished metal, were now scarred with cracks, scorch marks, and flickering lights. Outside, the viewports showed the remains of what had been a proud fleet, now scattered like broken toys across the void of space. Ships that had taken centuries to build, vessels that had carried entire generations of soldiers and civilians, floated lifelessly, drifting with broken engines and shattered hulls. The enemy had come with a speed and ferocity no one could have predicted. They had no names that humans or aliens used to describe them, just silence followed by destruction. The alien commander's mind raced as he reviewed the reports on the holoscreens. Each one told a story of loss. Entire planetary systems had been stripped of life and resources, their inhabitants either eradicated or enslaved. The enemy did not leave witnesses. It did not negotiate. It simply consumed. He had led his people through countless wars before, but this was different. This was not a conflict over territory, ideology, or resources. This was survival, and the odds were crushingly against him. He moved toward the main console, his claws brushing against the cold metal. He knew what had to be done, even though it was humiliating. Sending a distress message to other species had always been a last resort, a step taken only when all hope was gone. And yet here he was, composing the transmission. He knew that most of the great civilizations would hesitate. They would weigh risk against reward, and many would simply turn away, leaving his people to perish. But he had no choice. He activated the interstellar communicator, a device capable of sending messages across the galaxy faster than light. He encoded the message in the universal language, a combination of visual signals, mathematical patterns, and harmonic frequencies that any intelligent species could understand. In his message, he did not ask for an alliance. He did not offer trade, territory, or riches. He begged for survival. The transmission carried across light years, passing through nebulae, asteroid fields, and war-torn systems. Some civilizations ignored it. Some intercepted it, only to dismiss it as desperation from a dying species. Few responded, and those that did sent cautious replies, outlining rules and demands. Among the recipients was a young species called humanity. They had appeared on the galactic stage only a few centuries ago, still primitive in the eyes of older, more powerful races. They were curious, stubborn, and emotionally unpredictable. Many in the Galactic Council had long debated whether humans would survive a major interstellar conflict. Most believed they would fail. When the message finally reached Earth, it caused a stir. Scientists were the first to receive it, decoding the strange patterns and confirming that it was not a hoax. Governments quickly became involved, convening emergency meetings to discuss the implications. There were arguments, of course. Some leaders warned of risk. "We do not know their enemy. We do not know if this is a trap," they said. Historians reminded everyone of humanity's past, pointing to wars that had nearly destroyed nations, conflicts that had ended in starvation, devastation, and bitter grudges. They said the species was still young, immature, and ill-prepared for something this vast. Despite the warnings, not everyone disagreed. There were voices that saw opportunity and responsibility. Some argued that humanity had a chance to show its strength and resilience on a galactic scale. Others spoke of morality. If humans had the ability to help, should they not act, even if the cost was high? But such voices were drowned out in bureaucracy and hesitation. Days passed, and the alien commander waited, expecting a response of cautious refusal, a series of conditions, or silence. For a moment he feared they had ignored him completely, but as the days turned into a week, he realized something unexpected. Humanity did not respond in words. They did not send messages of negotiation or fear. Instead, actions began to speak louder than any council meeting could dictate. The first sign was the movement of ships. Civilian and military fleets, some old and some newly built, began mobilizing. These vessels were not as large or as powerful as those of older civilizations, but their designs were clever, optimized for flexibility and adaptability. Engineers had made modifications based on simulations, experiments, and bold guesses. Pilots and commanders communicated not just with formal orders, but with intuition, trust, and shared knowledge. Humanity was preparing quietly, efficiently, without seeking approval or praise. Inside the alien command chamber, the commander watched with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. He had expected bureaucracy, hesitation, and fear. He had expected humans to debate endlessly before taking any action. Instead, he saw movement, initiative, and courage. Even without a formal declaration, they had answered the call. On Earth, people from all walks of life contributed to the effort. Scientists worked around the clock, developing technologies that could be integrated into the fleets. Factories churned tirelessly, building ships, weapons, and supplies. Civilians volunteered to support logistics, medical care, and communication networks. There was no centralized command dictating every decision. Instead, humans acted with shared purpose. Each understood the stakes, and each chose to act not for glory, not for profit, but because it was the right thing to do. The alien commander marveled at the human approach. They did not value perfection. They did not hesitate to risk what was expendable to protect what was invaluable. In human logic, loss was a tool, not a defeat. They adapted quickly, learning from mistakes and turning errors into opportunities. In the chaos of war, they found strength. As the fleets prepared to enter alien space, the commander observed their unorthodox formations. Unlike traditional fleets, which relied on strict lines, synchronized movements, and predictable tactics, human ships moved in patterns that were irregular yet coordinated. They used unconventional routes, feints, and diversions that confused observers from more disciplined species. Where most would see disorder, humans saw flexibility. Where others saw risk, they saw opportunity. The first engagement with the enemy was unlike any battle the commander had witnessed. Humans did not charge blindly, nor did they wait passively. They advanced carefully, then adapted mid-strike, altering formations in response to unexpected enemy maneuvers. Ships that appeared old or weak were deployed strategically, creating openings that others would never anticipate. The enemy, used to predictable responses, faltered. Humanity was proving that survival did not always rely on strength alone. It relied on intelligence, creativity, and courage. Even as the alien commander recorded these events, he felt a mixture of awe and fear. Humans were unlike any species he had encountered in centuries of command. They were young, yes, and flawed, but their flaws were part of their strength. They were unpredictable, relentless, and capable of turning desperation into advantage. In one corner of the command chamber, a small monitor displayed a live feed of Earth. Children played in schools, workers moved through factories, and families went about daily routines. Yet beneath this ordinary surface, a species was preparing to step into a cosmic war. Humans did not need grand speeches or ceremonies to act. They understood that the cost of inaction was greater than the risk of action. The alien commander realized that his plea had been answered, not with words, not with negotiation, but with determination. Humanity was moving forward alone, yet united. They did not seek recognition. They did not demand gratitude. They acted because it was necessary. As he watched the ships begin their journey, he could not help but reflect on his own species' history. The great civilizations of the galaxy had always prioritized strategy, tradition, and hierarchy. They had valued control above all else. Yet here were humans, proving that courage, adaptability, and shared purpose could overcome even the most calculated enemy. He knew that the days ahead would be dangerous. The enemy was relentless, and many feared it could not be stopped. But for the first time in decades, the alien commander felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity had answered the call, not because they were asked politely, not because they were ordered, but because they understood what was right. The commander made a decision. He would no longer direct humans. He would observe and support when possible, but he would let them lead in their own way. For he had learned something vital. Strength was not always measured in firepower or numbers. Sometimes the greatest strength was the willingness to act, even when the outcome was uncertain. In the quiet of his chamber, with alarms still echoing faintly and the holograms flickering, the alien commander allowed himself a small, rare smile. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity could succeed where others had failed. Perhaps they could survive, and perhaps they could teach the galaxy that courage, unity, and determination were powers in their own right. He knew the coming battles would test every limit of human endurance and ingenuity. But in that moment, as ships prepared to leave Earth and venture into the unknown, he felt a certainty he had not known before. Humanity had chosen to answer alone, and in doing so, they had already begun to change the galaxy. Humanity's fleets entered alien space with cautious determination. The stars seemed brighter here, but the void was no friend. Debris from destroyed planets and shattered vessels drifted silently, a stark reminder of the enemy's unstoppable nature. Even seasoned human captains felt a chill as they maneuvered through the wreckage. Yet there was no fear that paralyzed them. There was only focus, sharp and unyielding. Every ship from the smallest scout to the largest cruiser had a role to play, and every crew member understood that survival depended on coordination, speed, and adaptability. The alien commander watched from his command chamber as human ships moved forward. Unlike the fleets of other species he had seen, humans did not rely on rigid formations. They were unpredictable. Some ships veered left while others right, then suddenly converged in unexpected patterns. Their strategy was not perfection but flexibility. They improvised, learned, and changed their tactics in real time. The commander had never seen such behavior on the battlefield. Other civilizations valued precision, order, and discipline. Humans valued adaptability, creativity, and courage. When the first contact with the enemy occurred, it was sudden and violent. Human ships encountered a scouting fleet of the enemy, smaller than the main force but more lethal than any training simulations could prepare them for. Energy beams lanced across space, tearing through metal and igniting fires in the void. Explosions erupted around the human ships, sending shrapnel in all directions. Many expected chaos, even panic. Yet human crews remained composed. Pilots adjusted trajectories in milliseconds, engineers rerouted power to weaken systems, and soldiers prepared for boarding contingencies. The attack was fierce, but humanity had anticipated unpredictability and had built resilience into every system. The alien commander leaned forward as he observed a human cruiser under heavy fire. Its shields were failing, weapons offline, and engines damaged. In any other species, this ship would have been abandoned. Yet the crew did not retreat. They used the ship as bait, drawing enemy fire into a trap. Smaller human fighters, moving with precise timing, struck from hidden angles, targeting weak points the enemy did not expect. In minutes, a ship that seemed doomed turned the tide of the battle. The enemy faltered, confused by the humans' unconventional tactics. On Earth, scientists monitored the battle in real time. They were not on the ships, yet their work mattered just as much as the pilots' courage. Data from sensors, satellites, and experimental algorithms flowed into control centers, where teams analyzed every movement of the enemy. They predicted patterns, calculated probabilities, and transmitted updates to the fleets. Humans trusted one another implicitly. A mistake by one team did not lead to blame. It led to correction, adjustment, and rapid learning. Unlike older civilizations, humans did not fear imperfection. They used it to their advantage. As the battle continued, the alien commander realized something startling. Humans did not fight like soldiers of a single species. They fought like a species united, as if every individual understood that failure was unacceptable. Where other civilizations relied on rules, humans relied on responsibility. Where others demanded obedience, humans demanded participation. Each decision was informed by intellect, instinct, and a profound understanding of stakes higher than their own survival. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for life itself. The enemy, relentless and cunning, adjusted its approach. Larger ships arrived, deploying weapons that could destroy multiple human vessels with a single strike. They used energy storms, gravitational traps, and unexpected ambushes. Many expected the humans to break, to retreat under the overwhelming assault. But human crews responded differently. They studied every attack, learned from every hit, and adapted faster than the enemy could predict. Ships that seemed obsolete were upgraded in the midst of combat. Engineers rerouted energy to shields or weapons depending on the moment, turning weakness into opportunity. In the middle of the chaos, a human captain named Arya Chen became a symbol of this resilience. Her ship, the Dauntless, was heavily damaged during an enemy ambush. Sensors failed intermittently, and the crew was injured, but she refused to retreat. She coordinated with nearby vessels, creating decoys and launching counterattacks. Every maneuver she ordered was calculated, yet flexible enough to adjust to unforeseen circumstances. Under her leadership, the human fleet managed not just to survive, but to gain ground. Arya's bravery inspired others. Across the battlefield, human crews followed instinct and trust, moving as a collective without centralized control. The alien commander watched with a mixture of astonishment and unease. He had led fleets across centuries, yet never had he seen a species turn chaos into strength so naturally. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and brilliant under pressure. Meanwhile, civilians across human-controlled space played their own part in the effort. Engineers repaired damaged ships faster than the enemy could destroy them. Scientists developed new technologies mid-battle, sending upgrades directly to vessels in space. Logistic teams ensured supplies reached the front lines, sometimes risking attacks themselves. Humanity's ability to mobilize its entire population, using every skill and resource, was unlike anything the alien commander had seen. It was a level of unity and determination that transcended traditional strategy. The first major engagement ended with a victory that stunned both humans and the alien commander. The enemy had retreated, leaving several ships destroyed and hundreds more damaged. Human losses were significant, but they were calculated. Ships and crews were sacrificed when necessary, but each loss was used to learn and adapt. The commander realized that humans did not value survival in isolation. They valued progress. Every encounter taught them something new, and each mistake became a tool for the next challenge. Human leaders did not celebrate loudly. There were no parades or grand speeches. Instead, they focused immediately on what was next. Ships were repaired, strategies analyzed, and lessons shared across the fleet. Humans did not rest. They understood that victory was not a single event but a continuous effort. Their mindset was different from any other species in the galaxy. They fought not because they sought glory, but because they understood responsibility, duty, and consequence. The alien commander noted another unique trait. Humans often acted in ways that defied conventional logic. When faced with a powerful enemy formation, they would sometimes split forces or send weaker ships forward intentionally. Observers might see recklessness, but humans saw opportunity. They understood risk differently. Loss was not failure, it was information, a way to gain an advantage that others could not predict. Their courage was inseparable from their intelligence, and their intelligence was inseparable from their courage. As the humans pushed deeper into alien territory, new challenges emerged. Planets under enemy control were heavily fortified. Entire fleets patrolled the space around them. Enemy forces adapted quickly, using ambushes and traps to slow human progress. Yet humans met each challenge with the same mindset: learn, adapt, and push forward. Every setback became a lesson. Every surprise was a test of ingenuity. No alien commander had ever seen such a combination of persistence and flexibility on this scale. On one battle-scarred planet, humans landed forces to rescue trapped civilians. Enemy patrols were everywhere, yet human soldiers used teamwork, stealth, and improvised tactics to outmaneuver them. They coordinated with pilots above and engineers below, creating networks of support that allowed them to achieve objectives that seemed impossible. The alien commander watched in awe as humans executed strategies that combined creativity, courage, and determination in ways no other species had. In these moments, he began to understand a deeper truth. Humans did not fight merely with weapons or technology. They fought with their minds, their hearts, and their shared understanding of purpose. Every member of the species, from the youngest recruit to the most experienced commander, contributed to the collective effort. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but not careless. Their decisions were guided by a sense of responsibility that surpassed fear, doubt, or hesitation. By the end of the second campaign in alien space, human fleets had achieved a remarkable feat. They had not defeated the enemy completely, nor had they conquered alien territory. But they had survived, adapted, and pushed forward where older, more experienced civilizations might have fallen. The alien commander could no longer underestimate them. Humans were young, yes, and flawed, but their flaws were part of their strength. Their unity, resilience, and courage made them a force unlike any other. He began to realize that humans were not just participants in the galaxy, they were catalysts for change. They did not wait for permission, and they did not expect recognition. When asked for help, they answered, not with words, but with action. They acted alone, yet they were not isolated. Every individual, every ship, every person contributed to a shared purpose. In the quiet moments after battle, the human crews tended to the injured, repaired their ships, and shared what they had learned. There was no arrogance, no demand for credit. There was only preparation for what came next. Humans understood that the war was far from over. The enemy was still out there, still powerful, still relentless. But humanity had already shown the galaxy something extraordinary. Courage was not the absence of fear, and strength was not the absence of loss. True power came from the willingness to act, adapt, and endure, even when the odds seemed impossible. The alien commander recorded these events carefully. He had hoped for assistance, perhaps even a chance to regain control. Instead, he found himself observing a young species that had chosen to act alone, and yet was changing the course of history simply by refusing to give up. Humans did not rely on ancient traditions, on perfect plans, or on the authority of older civilizations. They relied on themselves, on each other, and on the unshakable belief that doing nothing was worse than risking everything. As the human fleets prepared for the next stage of their campaign, the commander felt a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that they might succeed where others had failed, and fear that the enemy would underestimate them and pay the price. He knew that humanity's journey was only beginning, but one fact was undeniable. The humans had answered the call, not with hesitation, not with debate, but with courage, ingenuity, and action. Alone, they were already proving that the galaxy had misjudged them. And in that realization, he found himself asking a question he had never asked before. Could a species so young, so unpredictable, and so determined truly change the balance of the galaxy? The answer was unfolding before him, star by star, battle by battle, and for the first time in decades, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps humanity might not only survive but thrive. The humans had pushed deeper into alien-controlled space, and with every system they entered, the enemy became more cunning, more ruthless. Entire planets had been turned into fortresses, orbiting fleets patrolled the void, and hidden ambushes awaited at every turn. Despite this, human crews moved forward, guided not by fear but by determination and trust in one another. Each ship, each pilot, each soldier understood that hesitation could mean the end not just for themselves, but for countless others who depended on them. The alien commander, observing from his own fleet, had begun to understand that human bravery was unlike anything he had encountered. Other species relied on precise calculations, centuries of tradition, and strict hierarchies. Humans, by contrast, relied on intuition, collaboration, and a relentless willingness to act. They made mistakes, yes, but they turned those mistakes into lessons. Where the enemy expected hesitation, humans acted. Where it expected order, they used unpredictability. And where the enemy expected fear, humans gave courage. The next challenge came in the form of a massive enemy fleet guarding a key supply planet. Reports indicated that the enemy had deployed the most advanced ships they possessed, each one capable of annihilating a human cruiser in moments. They were accompanied by orbital defense platforms armed with energy cannons and missile batteries. The planet's surface was heavily fortified, with automated systems ready to repel any invasion. Intelligence suggested that the enemy expected no one would dare approach. The humans approached in their usual unconventional formation. Scouts moved ahead, not in predictable lines, but in irregular, overlapping paths that made targeting difficult. Larger vessels followed, ready to strike where the enemy was weakest. On board every ship, crews worked tirelessly, monitoring sensors, repairing damage, and preparing for every possible scenario. Humans did not wait for certainty. They acted with courage, accepting that risk was part of strategy. Captain Arya Chen, commanding the Dauntless, had been assigned to lead a critical assault team. Her mission was to disable the planet's primary defense grid so that the rest of the fleet could safely land reinforcements. She reviewed the battle plan with her officers, but she did not treat it as final. "Plans are guides, not rules," she told them. "We will adapt to what we see. We fight with our minds as much as with our weapons." Her words inspired confidence. The crew understood that survival depended on ingenuity, not rigid adherence to orders. The battle began with a sudden strike. Enemy ships unleashed energy blasts, tearing through space with deadly precision. Missiles streaked past human vessels, while laser turrets on orbital platforms fired continuously. Explosions erupted around the human ships, yet crews did not falter. Pilots veered through the chaos, engineers rerouted power to shields and weapons, and soldiers prepared for boarding operations. Each crew member knew their role, but they also understood that improvisation was essential. Arya's team moved forward, navigating a corridor of enemy fire that would have destroyed larger, more rigid fleets. They used smaller ships as decoys, drawing fire away from critical vessels. When an enemy cruiser attempted to flank them, human fighters struck from unexpected angles, disabling its engines and forcing it into retreat. The alien commander, observing the battle, found himself astonished. He had never seen such coordination combined with creativity. Humans did not fight like other species. They fought in a way that defied expectation, turning every disadvantage into an advantage. Meanwhile, human engineers on the ground worked in tandem with the fleet above. Remote-controlled drones disabled key orbital defense systems while technicians repaired damaged equipment under fire. Scientists adapted energy shields to counter enemy weapons, sending real-time updates to ships in orbit. Civilians provided support, managing logistics, medical care, and communication networks. Every part of humanity was involved in the battle, creating a level of cooperation that few species could match. As the humans pressed their attack, the enemy grew desperate. They deployed new weaponry, attempting to overwhelm the fleet with sheer firepower. Entire squadrons were sacrificed to create openings. Many expected humanity to break under pressure, yet the crews adapted. Engineers devised new energy redirection techniques, pilots executed daring maneuvers, and soldiers adjusted tactics on the fly. Losses were felt deeply, but they became fuel for innovation. Every setback became an opportunity to learn, to adjust, and to strike back harder. In one dramatic moment, Arya's Dauntless faced a direct assault from the enemy's flagship. Its weapons were powerful enough to destroy her ship in seconds. Sensors went dark, communication channels failed intermittently, and the hull began to crack under fire. Yet Arya remained calm. She coordinated with nearby ships, using debris and smaller vessels as cover. With precise timing, they executed a flanking maneuver that disabled the flagship's weapons. The enemy was forced to retreat, stunned by the humans' audacity. Across the battlefield, similar stories unfolded. Human crews acted with autonomy, yet their actions were synchronized. They did not wait for orders, they anticipated each other's moves. They used intelligence, courage, and improvisation to outmaneuver an enemy that relied on predictability and power. The alien commander, watching, could not suppress a growing realization. Humans were not just surviving, they were thriving against impossible odds. On the planet's surface, human soldiers carried out the next phase of the operation. They moved through fortified enemy positions, using stealth and ingenuity to bypass automated defenses. Where brute force failed, creativity prevailed. Teams coordinated with orbital drones, using real-time information to navigate dangerous terrain. Every step forward required courage, skill, and trust. Each soldier understood that the mission's success depended not just on individual bravery, but on collective effort. By the end of the campaign, humanity had achieved a remarkable victory. The enemy fleet was pushed back, the planetary defenses neutralized, and key resources secured. Human casualties were significant, but they were managed. Ships were repaired, soldiers treated and rotated, and knowledge from the battle was shared across the fleet. Unlike older civilizations, which often rested after victories, humans immediately prepared for the next challenge. They understood that survival was not a single event. It was continuous effort, adaptation, and determination. The alien commander realized that the humans' greatest strength was not their technology or numbers. It was their mindset. Humans embraced risk, learned from failure, and adapted faster than the enemy could respond. They acted not because they sought glory, but because they understood responsibility. They did not wait for permission. They did not rely on rigid command structures. They relied on each other, on their creativity, and on their willingness to act, even when the outcome was uncertain. As humans advanced further into enemy territory, they encountered new challenges. Enemy ambushes became more sophisticated, using decoys, energy traps, and electronic warfare to disrupt communications. Some planets were heavily mined, and orbital platforms fired with unerring precision. Yet humans met every obstacle with the same resilience. Ships were sacrificed strategically, losses turned into lessons, and every engagement strengthened their coordination and resolve. On board the Dauntless, Arya and her crew continued to innovate. They deployed experimental technology, such as adaptive shields and energy jammers, directly in the heat of battle. They modified tactics based on real-time data from scouts and sensors. When an enemy cruiser attempted a surprise attack, they used decoy ships to lure it into a trap, disabling it without unnecessary loss. Every action was calculated yet flexible, precise yet adaptable. Humans were learning faster than the enemy could predict. The alien commander, observing these events, felt both awe and unease. Humans were not just fighting, they were changing the rules of engagement. They did not rely on strength alone. They relied on ingenuity, creativity, and courage. They were unpredictable in ways that the enemy could not calculate, and relentless in ways that older civilizations rarely displayed. In centuries of command, he had never encountered a species capable of adapting so rapidly, thinking so strategically, and acting so boldly. Civilian populations continued to play a critical role. Engineers, scientists, and logistical teams worked tirelessly to support frontline operations. Data from simulations and experiments was shared openly, allowing the fleet to adapt faster than the enemy. Supplies, medical aid, and reinforcements were coordinated across star systems, ensuring that every mission had the resources it needed. The humans' ability to mobilize an entire species, from civilians to soldiers, created a force multiplier that no enemy could anticipate. By the conclusion of this campaign, humans had gained not just territory, but respect. Their victories were not the result of superior firepower alone, but of resilience, creativity, and unity. The alien commander realized that humanity's uniqueness lay in their willingness to act, to adapt, and to endure. They did not wait for perfection, and they did not fear failure. Instead, they turned challenges into opportunities, setbacks into lessons, and chaos into advantage. The commander reflected on his own species' history. Centuries of rigid strategy, tradition, and hierarchy had often limited creativity. Humans, young and untested by interstellar standards, were redefining what it meant to fight a war. They relied on instinct, courage, and collaboration, proving that strength could be measured not just in firepower, but in adaptability and resilience. As the humans prepared for their next operation, the alien commander understood something profound. Humanity had not only survived, they had become a symbol of hope for other species still trapped under the enemy's shadow. They had demonstrated that intelligence, courage, and unity could overcome overwhelming odds, and they had done it alone without seeking approval or recognition. The humans continued their campaign, undeterred by losses, undaunted by danger, and unafraid of uncertainty. They had shown that the galaxy had misjudged them. They had proven that a young, unpredictable species could rise above fear, act with ingenuity, and change the course of history. And as the alien commander watched, he realized that the future of the galaxy might very well depend on these humans, who fought not for conquest or power, but because they understood what was right, and because they refused to leave anyone behind. Humanity's journey was far from over. The enemy remained powerful, and the battles ahead would test every limit of endurance, skill, and courage. But one truth was undeniable. Humans had faced impossible odds and had survived. They had adapted when others would have fallen, innovated when others would have paused, and acted with courage when others would have hesitated. They were a species that refused to surrender, a species whose strength came not from weapons alone, but from determination, ingenuity, and unity. And in the alien commander's observation, it became clear that humanity was no longer just a young species in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of hope, and a living testament to the power of action, courage, and resilience. Alone, they had already begun to change the course of the war. The humans had pushed far into enemy territory, and with every system they entered, the danger intensified. The enemy was no longer merely defensive. They had become aggressive, relentless, and more cunning than ever. Entire star systems were fortified, with orbital defense platforms, automated drones, and patrolling fleets ready to destroy any intruders. The humans had faced tough battles before, but the coming campaign would test every limit of their ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Captain Arya Chen and her crew aboard the Dauntless had been briefed on the mission for hours. Their objective was clear: infiltrate the enemy's central command sector, disable critical defense networks, and secure key strategic points. The enemy's forces were stronger, their weapons more advanced, and their strategies unpredictable. Many officers across the fleet felt anxiety creeping in, but Arya remained calm. She had faced impossible odds before and knew that hesitation could cost lives. She looked at her crew and said, "We do not fight because we hope to survive. We fight because if we do not, nothing else will survive. Adapt, act, and trust each other." Her words carried a quiet power, and the crew felt their fear replaced with determination. The human fleets advanced, moving through asteroid fields and war-torn star systems. Unlike the enemy, whose fleets moved with rigid precision, humans relied on unpredictability. Smaller ships darted between larger cruisers, using sudden, unexpected maneuvers to avoid fire. Scouts relayed information in real time, while engineers and scientists adjusted shields and weapon systems mid-battle. Every loss was analyzed instantly, every mistake turned into an opportunity. Humans did not fear failure, they used it to grow stronger. The first major confrontation in the enemy's central sector was unlike anything humans had faced before. Energy storms erupted across space, generated by massive orbital platforms designed to destroy entire fleets. Enemy ships moved with lightning speed, striking unpredictably and retreating before counterattacks could land. For hours, the humans fought, learning, adapting, and improvising. Pilots veered through deadly corridors, using debris and wreckage as cover. Engineers rerouted power to shields just in time to survive massive blasts. Soldiers prepared for boarding operations even as their ships were rocked by explosions. During the battle, Arya noticed a small group of human vessels being cornered by enemy cruisers. Communication channels were jammed, leaving them isolated. Without hesitation, she ordered a flanking maneuver. Smaller ships, disguised among the debris, moved into position and attacked the enemy from unexpected angles. Explosions erupted as the enemy's cruisers were disabled, giving the cornered humans a chance to escape. The alien commander, observing from his command station, could not hide his astonishment. No other species would have attempted such a risky tactic. Only humans had the courage and creativity to turn near-certain disaster into an advantage. On another front, human engineers deployed a daring strategy to disrupt the enemy's orbital platforms. They sent out swarms of small drones, some carrying electronic jammers, others equipped with energy charges. These drones moved with precision, targeting weak points in the defense systems. When a massive cannon prepared to fire on human ships, the drones disabled its targeting systems, rendering it useless. The humans did not simply destroy the platforms, they used the enemy's own infrastructure against them, showing a level of ingenuity that even seasoned commanders admired. The enemy responded with fury. Reinforcements arrived, massive ships bristling with advanced weapons and energy shields. The humans faced the greatest assault yet, and many expected them to falter. But human crews acted with unity and determination that transcended fear. Ships moved in coordinated chaos, using unpredictable patterns that the enemy could not anticipate. Engineers on every vessel adapted systems in real time, scientists shared updates across fleets, and soldiers executed tactics that relied on trust, intuition, and rapid decision-making. Captain Arya led a small team on a critical mission to infiltrate the enemy's central control hub. Using a combination of stealth ships and diversionary tactics, they navigated past heavy defenses and entered the sector undetected. Once inside, they deployed specialized drones to disable key systems, allowing the main human fleet to gain an advantage. The mission was dangerous, but every crew member understood its importance. They acted not out of hope, but out of responsibility. Every decision mattered, and every action could change the outcome of the campaign. Meanwhile, civilians and support teams across human-controlled systems worked tirelessly to ensure that the fleets had everything they needed. Supplies, medical aid, and reinforcements were coordinated with precision. Data from scientists and engineers allowed ships to upgrade shields, weapons, and navigation systems mid-battle. Unlike other civilizations, humans did not reserve innovation for laboratories or research centers. They applied it in real time, using knowledge as a weapon as powerful as any cannon. As the battle reached its climax, the humans faced a desperate enemy counterattack. Entire fleets of enemy ships moved to cut off human forces, while orbital platforms unleashed waves of energy fire. Losses mounted, and casualties were felt deeply. Yet human crews did not retreat. They adapted. They used what they had learned from previous battles to anticipate the enemy's moves, striking where least expected. Ships that seemed vulnerable were deployed as traps, drawing enemy fire while larger vessels struck critical targets. Every sacrifice was intentional, every maneuver calculated yet flexible. In the heat of the battle, Arya's leadership shone brightest. She coordinated multiple units simultaneously, adapting tactics to counter the enemy's unpredictable attacks. Her crew followed without hesitation, trusting her judgment and each other's abilities. Small victories multiplied into larger ones as human ingenuity and determination turned the tide. The alien commander watched in awe. He had led countless fleets, witnessed centuries of war, and yet never had he seen such resilience, creativity, and courage combined. Humans did not fight like any other species. They fought like one, moving as if guided by intuition, experience, and an unbreakable will. After hours of intense combat, humans achieved a decisive advantage. Key orbital platforms were disabled, enemy ships were destroyed or forced into retreat, and strategic positions were secured. The human fleet had gained ground where no one thought it possible. Losses had been significant, but each sacrifice had contributed to victory. Humans did not mourn in despair. They analyzed, learned, and prepared for what came next. The alien commander realized that the humans' greatest strength was not technology, tactics, or even courage alone. It was their ability to act decisively, adapt constantly, and trust one another implicitly. They faced overwhelming odds without hesitation, and their creativity allowed them to turn chaos into advantage. Other species relied on hierarchy and strict orders. Humans relied on responsibility, intelligence, and courage. Their unity was not imposed, it was chosen, and it made them formidable. Even after the battle, the humans did not pause for celebration. They immediately focused on repair, resupply, and planning the next phase. Engineers worked tirelessly to restore damaged ships. Scientists continued to improve weapons and shields. Pilots and soldiers reviewed every engagement, identifying strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. Humans understood that victory was not a single event. It was continuous effort, adaptation, and resilience. In one small, quiet moment aboard the Dauntless, Arya reflected on the cost of the campaign. Lives had been lost, ships destroyed, and systems damaged. Yet she also saw something extraordinary. Humans had faced impossible odds and survived. They had adapted faster than the enemy could anticipate, acted with ingenuity when faced with danger, and trusted each other completely. This was not luck. It was the strength of an entire species, united by courage, intelligence, and determination. The alien commander, observing all of this, felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. He had hoped to see humans fail, to see their inexperience prove fatal. Instead, he saw a species unlike any other, young, unpredictable, and unstoppable in ways that defied calculation. Humans did not fight merely for themselves. They fought for responsibility, for survival, and for what they understood to be right. They were shaping the galaxy not through conquest or fear, but through action, ingenuity, and courage. As humans prepared for the next stage of their campaign, it became clear that the war was far from over. The enemy remained powerful, clever, and relentless. Entire fleets still threatened key systems, and countless planets remained under enemy control. Yet humanity had shown that they could face the impossible and adapt, innovate, and overcome. Their victories were not just tactical. They were proof that determination, courage, and unity could change the course of the war. Civilian teams continued to support the campaign tirelessly. Engineers, scientists, and logistics specialists worked day and night, ensuring that the fleets could sustain momentum. Knowledge was shared freely, and every innovation was applied immediately. Humans did not wait for approval, perfection, or recognition. They acted because action was necessary. This approach magnified the effectiveness of their fleets and made them unpredictable and dangerous to the enemy. By the end of the campaign, humanity had achieved a turning point. Key enemy systems were weakened, supply lines disrupted, and morale shattered. Losses had been endured, but each sacrifice strengthened the humans' resolve. They had faced the most powerful forces yet and adapted successfully. The alien commander understood that humanity's success was not due to luck or technology alone. It was their resilience, intelligence, and courage. Humans did not rest. Even after the battle, they analyzed every encounter, improved their strategies, and prepared for the next challenge. The alien commander realized that humans were not just participants in the war, they were a force capable of shaping the outcome. They acted alone, yet their unity made them unstoppable. They did not seek recognition, and they did not boast. They simply acted, and in doing so, they had begun to change the galaxy. Captain Arya looked out at the stars from the bridge of the Dauntless. The enemy would strike again, stronger and more determined. But she knew humanity was ready. They had faced impossible odds before, adapted, and survived. They had shown that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the most overwhelming enemy. And when the next battle came, they would face it as they always had, together, acting decisively and refusing to give up. In the quiet of space, the alien commander recorded his observations. Humans were young, unpredictable, and untested by the full scale of galactic warfare, but they were remarkable. They had endured, adapted, and overcome challenges that would have broken older civilizations. They had shown that a species could act alone, without guidance or oversight, and achieve what others could not. The galaxy had underestimated them, and that mistake could prove costly. As the human fleets moved forward, preparing for the next stage of the war, it became clear that the future of the galaxy was changing. The enemy remained formidable, but humanity had already begun to redefine what it meant to fight, to survive, and to win. They were not just young warriors. They were a force of ingenuity, courage, and unity. And in the alien commander's observation, it became clear. Humans would not falter because they acted not for glory, not for conquest, but because it was necessary, and because they refused to leave anyone behind. The humans had advanced deep into enemy territory, their fleets battered but unbroken. The enemy had anticipated defeat after the previous campaigns, yet the humans continued to push forward, showing no sign of hesitation. Entire star systems were at stake, and the final confrontation would determine the survival of countless civilizations. Every human ship, every soldier, and every engineer understood that the coming battle would test them like never before. Failure was not an option. Captain Arya Chen stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, reviewing the fleet's positions. The human fleet had grown stronger and more coordinated after each engagement. They had learned from every encounter, adapting faster than the enemy could predict. Even the alien commander, who had observed human strategy for months, marveled at their ingenuity. Humans were unpredictable yet precise, daring yet disciplined, and united in a way that no other species had ever demonstrated. The enemy had consolidated its forces, assembling a massive fleet around a strategically vital star system. Orbital defense platforms bristled with energy weapons, massive cruisers patrolled the space lanes, and automated drones filled every gap. The humans had studied the enemy carefully, analyzing every pattern, every weakness, and every predictable movement. But they also understood that victory would not come from brute force alone. It would come from creativity, courage, and unity. As the human fleets approached, Arya gave her orders with quiet confidence. Ships would advance in staggered formations, using smaller vessels to probe enemy lines while larger cruisers delivered focused strikes. Engineers on board every ship were prepared to reroute power, deploy experimental systems, and repair damage on the fly. Soldiers prepared for boarding operations, rescue missions, and planetary assaults. Civilians in support roles ensured that logistics, supplies, and communications remained uninterrupted. Every part of humanity was involved, working toward a shared goal with precision and determination. The first clash was violent. Energy beams tore through space, explosions lit the void, and the enemy unleashed every weapon at their disposal. Many expected human ships to falter, to break under overwhelming pressure. Yet the humans moved with calm determination, using lessons from previous battles to counter every attack. Smaller ships darted unpredictably through the chaos, drawing enemy fire while larger vessels targeted critical weaknesses. Engineers rerouted energy to shields and weapons in moments, while scientists provided real-time calculations for optimal maneuvers. Arya directed the Dauntless through the heart of the enemy formation, coordinating multiple units simultaneously. She anticipated enemy strategies, adapting her fleet's movements to exploit openings. One group of cruisers feigned a retreat, luring the enemy into a trap. Hidden human fighters then struck from unexpected angles, disabling enemy engines and weapons. Another team deployed experimental drones to disrupt energy platforms, turning the enemy's own defenses against them. The alien commander observed in disbelief. He had seen countless species falter under pressure, yet humans thrived. Their courage, ingenuity, and unity allowed them to act where others would have hesitated. On the surface of the star system's primary planet, human ground forces prepared for deployment. Automated defenses lined the terrain, ready to destroy any intruders. Soldiers coordinated with orbital drones, scientists, and engineers, creating networks of support that allowed them to navigate and disable enemy systems. Every action was synchronized, yet flexible. Humans did not rely on rigid orders. They relied on trust, skill, and rapid decision-making. Each soldier understood the stakes, and each knew that their actions could determine the fate of the entire campaign. The enemy launched a massive counterattack, attempting to overwhelm the humans with superior numbers and firepower. Entire fleets of cruisers moved to flank the human forces, while orbital platforms unleashed waves of energy capable of destroying multiple ships at once. Losses mounted, but humans adapted. Ships that appeared vulnerable were used as bait to draw enemy fire, creating openings for heavier vessels to strike. Every sacrifice was strategic, every maneuver intentional. Humans had turned risk into strength, chaos into opportunity. Arya led a small team on a critical mission to infiltrate the enemy's central command station. Using stealth ships and diversionary tactics, They bypassed heavily defended areas and deployed specialized drones to disable key systems. The operation was dangerous, but the team moved with precision and courage. Every action, every calculation, every decision was driven by a single goal: ensure the success of the fleet and the survival of countless lives. Meanwhile, human engineers and scientists continued to innovate under pressure. Damaged ships were repaired mid-battle, shields were enhanced on the fly, and weapons systems were upgraded to counter new threats. Logistics teams ensured that fuel, supplies, and reinforcements reached the front lines without interruption. Civilians contributed by maintaining communication networks, monitoring sensors, and analyzing enemy behavior. Humanity's strength was not just in firepower, it was in collaboration, creativity, and resilience. As the battle reached its climax, the humans executed a coordinated strike on the enemy's central fleet. Experimental technology disrupted enemy shields, while smaller ships disabled communication networks. Larger vessels concentrated fire on critical targets, exploiting weaknesses identified through careful observation and real-time analysis. The enemy, despite its strength, was unprepared for the humans' unpredictability and coordination. Slowly, their formation began to break apart, their energy weapons faltered, and their morale weakened. On the ground, human soldiers seized the opportunity to advance. They moved with careful precision, disabling remaining defenses and securing strategic points. Orbital support ensured their safety, while engineers repaired key infrastructure to allow further operations. Every action was synchronized, every movement deliberate, yet flexible enough to adapt to unforeseen circumstances. Humans did not rely on luck, they relied on courage, intelligence, and teamwork. Captain Arya watched as the enemy's flagship was disabled by a combination of orbital strikes, drone attacks, and precision maneuvers by human cruisers. The enemy fleet began to retreat in disarray, and their forces on nearby planets faltered. Humans had achieved what many believed impossible. They had turned the tide of the war. The enemy was no longer invincible. They were vulnerable, and humanity's determination had shown that they could be defeated. Even in victory, humans did not celebrate prematurely. Ships continued to patrol, defenses remained active, and teams worked tirelessly to repair damage and recover resources. Civilians ensured that logistics, communication, and medical care remained uninterrupted. Humans understood that the war was not over until the threat was neutralized completely, and they were prepared to continue until that goal was achieved. The alien commander observed humanity's actions with a mix of awe and disbelief. He had hoped for failure, for hesitation, for doubt. Instead, he witnessed a species that had adapted to impossible challenges, innovated under pressure, and acted with unwavering courage. Humans did not fight for glory or recognition. They fought because it was necessary, and because they refused to allow others to suffer while they remained idle. In the aftermath of the final battle, humans secured the key systems and ensured that surviving enemy forces were contained. Communication networks were restored, planets were stabilized, and civilians were protected. Humans did not claim territory or seek power. They acted out of responsibility, morality, and a shared understanding of the stakes. Their victory was not just a military achievement, it was a testament to the strength of their species. Captain Arya and her crew reflected on the campaign. Ships had been lost, lives had been sacrificed, and the path had been fraught with danger. Yet humanity had prevailed, not through overwhelming force alone, but through ingenuity, unity, and determination. Every individual, from the youngest recruit to the most experienced officer, had contributed to the success. Humans had proven that courage, intelligence, and collaboration could overcome even the most powerful enemy. The alien commander requested a formal meeting with human leaders to express gratitude and offer alliances. Humanity accepted, but on their own terms. They did not seek ceremony or praise. They explained that they had acted because someone asked for help, and because they understood that inaction was far worse than risk. They had fought, adapted, and endured alone, but they had done so with integrity, intelligence, and courage. Their actions had changed the course of the war, and they had done so without seeking recognition or reward. As humans returned to their own space, they focused on rebuilding, sharing knowledge, and preparing for future challenges. The fleets were repaired, systems stabilized, and lessons learned were documented and shared. Humanity had proven that survival was not just about technology or numbers. It was about courage, adaptability, and unity. They had faced the impossible and prevailed, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. The alien commander recorded his final report to the Galactic Council. He described a species unlike any other, young, unpredictable, courageous, and resilient. They had acted alone, yet they had inspired countless others. Their victory was not just a triumph of technology or strategy, it was a triumph of spirit. The humans had shown that even against overwhelming odds, determination, intelligence, and unity could prevail. Captain Arya watched as Earth came into view. The planet had survived, but it had changed. Humanity had grown, not just in power, but in understanding. They had proven that they could face the greatest challenges, adapt, and triumph. They had answered a call for help alone, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. Humanity's journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown threats, and the lessons they had learned would guide them in the years to come. Yet one truth was clear. Humans had faced the impossible, adapted, and succeeded. They had shown that courage, intelligence, and unity were more powerful than any weapon. And as the stars stretched out before them, Captain Arya and her crew knew that they would continue to act with purpose, ingenuity, and determination wherever they were needed. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had believed the young species would falter, that inexperience would lead to failure. But humans had proved them wrong. They had faced overwhelming danger, adapted faster than anyone could anticipate, and acted with courage and intelligence that no one had expected. Their victory was not just military, it was a statement. Humanity had arrived, and they were a force to be reckoned with. In the quiet moments aboard the Dauntless, Arya reflected on everything they had accomplished. Losses had been felt, sacrifices made, yet humanity had endured. They had adapted, innovated, and persevered. They had acted alone, yet their unity had made them unstoppable. The victory was not just theirs. It belonged to every person who had contributed, every engineer who repaired a ship, every scientist who calculated a trajectory, and every civilian who ensured the fleets could continue. Humanity had triumphed, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy the power of courage, ingenuity, and unity. As Earth grew closer, the humans prepared to return home. They would rebuild, recover, and continue to grow. They would share their knowledge, protect those in need, and remain vigilant against future threats. But one fact would remain unchallenged. When asked for help, humanity answered alone. And in answering, they had changed the galaxy forever. The alien commander, watching the humans depart, realized that he had witnessed something extraordinary. A species he had once underestimated had proven that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome the greatest obstacles. Humanity had not sought recognition or reward, they had acted because it was necessary. Their actions had saved countless lives, changed the course of the war, and demonstrated the true meaning of strength. And as the stars stretched endlessly before the human fleets, one thing was clear. Humanity would continue to act, to adapt, and to endure. They had faced the impossible and prevailed. They had answered the call alone, and in doing so, they had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of courage, and a force the galaxy would never forget.